Turn in your own Bibles or in the Pew Bible, the Gospel of Mark, chapter 7. I'll be reading the first half of the chapter through verse 23. Then the Pharisees and some of the scribes came together to him, having come from Jerusalem. Now when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is, with unwashed hands, they found fault. The Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands in a special way, holding the tradition of the elders. When they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash. There are many other things which they have received in hold, like the washing of cups, pitchers, copper vessels, couches. Then the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, "Why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands?" He answered and said to them, "Well did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. For laying aside the commandment of God, you hold the tradition of men, the washing of pitchers and cups, and many other such things you do." He said to them, "All too well you reject the commandment of God, that you may keep your tradition. For Moses said, 'Honor your father and mother,' and he who curses his father or mother, let him be put to death. But you say, if a man says to his father and mother, 'Whatever profit you might have received from me is Corban,' that is a gift to God, then you no longer let him do anything for his father or mother, making the word of God of no effect through your tradition, which you have handed down, and many such things you do." When he had called all the multitude to himself, he said to them, "Hear me, everyone, and understand. There is nothing that enters a man from the outside which can defile him. But the things which come out of him, those are the things that defile a man. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear." When he had entered a house away from the crowd, his disciples asked him concerning the parables. And he said, "Are you thus without understanding also? Do you not perceive that whatever enters a man from outside cannot defile him? Because it does not enter his heart, but his stomach, and is eliminated, thus purifying all foods." And he said, "What comes out of a man, that defiles a man. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these things come from within and defile a man." Our 3.5-year-old grandson, Noah, has trouble saying his F's. Yesterday we went to the Science Center over in Hawaii. Lake Science, and they're having a special thing, a big puppetry thing outside. In fact, Jim Henson's daughter was the one that organized this and did this. It's really nice. They had a lot of kites, birds, kites in the form of birds, and one of the little projects they had for the children was making of kites. And then you would fly the kites, after you made a kite of a bird. So Noah and I made kites, and then we flew the kites. Grandson, he would find the kite, run around real fast, thought flying the kite, and he kept shouting, "I'm highin', I'm highin'," A couple months ago, Sunday noon, he and his father and his mom were at our house, came to church, we had Sunday dinner, and we all sat down, and he looked at me, and he said, "Grandpa, you're honey," which means, of course, you're funny. That's what he meant. He said, "You're honey." And I didn't know what he was talking about because I wasn't trying to be honey. But I didn't think intentionally. So I didn't know what he was talking about until Jude pointed at my shirt. You see, I had gone home, I had gone upstairs, and I had changed out of my coat and tie and everything. I had put on blue jeans and a t-shirt. But in my hurry, I had put my t-shirt on inside out and backwards. He was the only one who noticed that. I I read another little thing about a thoughtful little girl who, after hearing some of the Jesus teachings like I read this morning in Sunday school, said to her mom, Mom, I think Jesus lived his life inside out. And that's the theme of this service today, of this sermon today, that inside out. I'm going to talk about living inside out. And our text today is from Mark chapter 7, and in this scene, Jesus is having one of his many encounters and verbal bouts with his nemesis, the Pharisees. As I read this passage, all of Jesus' criticisms of the Pharisees can be seen and sent in the terms of inside and outside. Jesus encourages his listeners to live from the inside out. First, Jesus encourages fault confessing rather than fault finding. Not looking outside at other people's faults, but inside at our own. Our gospel lesson starts off with these words. And the Pharisees and some of the scribes came together to him, having come from Jerusalem. And when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is, unclean, unwashed hands, they found fault. Now the Pharisees were expert fault finders. They were notorious for being able to find fault with everyone about everything, but never about themselves. They could spot a sin a mile away, but they couldn't see their own sin staring them in the face. That made Jesus furious. He said to them, "You blind guides, straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel." He regularly called them hypocrites, a topic that I'm going to get back to later on in this sermon. But first, I'm going to concentrate here on this fault finding. Fault finding is epidemic in American society, I think. If something bad happens, we assume that it must be somebody's fault and somebody has to pay for it. You know, financially, politically, legally, emotionally. Politics has become, to a great extent, a blame game. Congress is one big blame fest. In presidential election years, it's in full gear. It certainly seems to be this time around. Democrats and Republicans finding fault with each other, nonstop. The political ads are depressing. This is true of both liberals and conservatives. It's true of Christians. It's true of atheists. Even when we Christians try not to judge, it comes out wrong. A good example is the hate the sin, love the sinner motto that has become very popular in recent decades. This is an attempt of Christians to affirm moral standards while not appearing judgmental to those who fall short of the standards. We think in saying this that we're being clever, but I think it fails. Mark Lowry is a Christian comedian and songwriter, best known for his moving Christmas song titled "Mary, Did You Know?" He said something about this attitude that deserves repeating. He said, "Love the sinner, hate the sin? How about love the sinner, hate your own sin? I don't have time to hate your sin. There are too many of you. Hating my sin is a full-time job. How about you hate your sin, I'll hate my sin, and let's just love each other." Now that's good advice. We should be confessing our own sins rather than spending our time and our effort condemning the sins of other people. James says, "Confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed." Jesus said, "Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye and do not consider the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Let me remove the speck from your eye,' and look at planks in your own eye? Hypocrite," he says. "First remove the plank from your own eye, then you will be able to see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." So let's be fault confessors rather than fault finders. It's fine if you want to spend time identifying sin, but identifying them on the inside rather than the outside. Second, Jesus encourages us to be commandment following rather than tradition keeping. Jesus says to the Pharisees in our passage, verse 8, "For laying aside the commandment of God, you hold the tradition of men, the washing of pitchers and cups, and many other such things you do." He said to them, "All too well you reject the commandment of God, that you may keep your tradition." Now, our passage gives specific examples of how the Pharisees did this. The Pharisees were obsessed with the fact that Jesus and his disciples did not wash their hands in the ritually prescribed manner. It says, for the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands in a special way, holding the tradition of the elders. When they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash. There are many other things which they have received in whole, like the washing of cups and pitchers and copper vessels. And the Pharisees and scribes asked him, why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, to eat bread with unwashed hands? And then Jesus mentioned another example here of how the Pharisees ignore the care of their elderly parents, appealing to tradition. Now, I'm not going to get into all the specifics here that this passage gets into about the Jewish legal matters, because they don't really apply specifically to us today. More important, I think, is how we imitate the Pharisees in our own way by following human laws and traditions rather than God's commandments. Now, we might not follow religious laws very much any longer, but we certainly are very conscious of secular laws. And it seems to me that Americans are obsessed with laws. We really seem to think that every problem that we have, every social and moral problem of our nation, can be solved simply by passing a new law or by enforcing already existing laws. And on top of the laws are rules and regulations. Now, we might look back 2,000 years and scoff at all the rules and the laws of the Pharisees, but I think that we Americans are just as legalistic in our own way as they ever were. Law has become the substitute for ethics in our nation. Many people simply assume that if something is legal, then it is moral. As long as we're not breaking the law, then we can do whatever we want to do. Now that is a legalism. We are a nation of legalists. The law, we have to understand, is a very low standard of morality. Jesus told the disciples to exceed the legalistic righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees. He said, for I say to you, unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Now it's the same as for us. Just because something is legal doesn't mean it is permissible for a Christian to do when it comes to business and financial dealings or personal morality or politics or foreign policy. We are to be a God-honoring, God-obeying people, not just a law-abiding and tradition-keeping people. Now, traditions are fine and laws are good, just don't let them get in the way of obeying God and take the place of obeying God. Third, Jesus encourages heart worship, not lip service. Verse 6. He answered and said to them, well did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites. As it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. Jesus is talking about the difference between inner worship and outer worship. Worshiping from the inside out, or simply in an outer form. True religion has to do with the heart. Is our heart in right relationship to God? This is what it boils down to. Where is your heart this morning? And more important, where is your heart tomorrow morning? And where was it yesterday morning? Now, many people these days distinguish between religion and spirituality. They say that religion is external, spirituality is internal, with the suggestion that religion is somehow bad and spirituality is good. My experience is a lot of these spirituality-only people are a lot less spiritual than the religious people. And my experience is that the spirituality people a lot are much more judgmental toward religious people than the other way around. There are a lot of people that want nothing to do with organized religion and can speak well with disdain, often with disdain of the institutional church. And they say that what is in the heart that is important. Well, yes, it is true that what is in the heart is important. But if it is in the heart, on the inside, it will be expressed on the outside. I think the age of, purely outwardly expressed religion for other motives other than worship of God is really mostly gone. I'm sure there are vestiges of it in today's society, but not so much here in New England. All the surveys show that New England is one of the least religious areas of the country. A smaller percentage of people go to worship here in New England than anywhere else in the country. That's especially true of Vermont and New Hampshire. But I perceive, having spent a lot of my ministry in New England and ministering also elsewhere, that a lot of the ones who attend the worship here in New England are doing so for good reasons. That they really genuinely want to connect with God. They're not doing it for cultural reasons or social reasons. They don't really care what people think. They're not doing it to be seen by people or to look good to others. They're doing it for spiritual reasons. So you can pat yourself on the back here this morning. Now, I'm sure there are some parts of the country where outward religion and that type of conformity is still a strong part of the culture, but I don't see it here. Most people who are outwardly religious here are inwardly spiritually minded, insofar as at least they are generally seeking and often generally experiencing something real on the inside. But religious sincerity is not enough. There needs to be a real commitment to the transformation of the inner life. And this is where I want to challenge us. This is what Jesus is talking about in the last verses of our passage. He says, there is nothing that enters a man from the outside which can defile him. The things which come out of him, those are the things that defile a man. Do you not perceive that whatever enters a man from the outside cannot defile him, because it does not enter his heart, but his stomach, and is eliminated, thus purifying all foods. What comes out of a man, that defiles a man. For from within, out of the heart of man proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within to defile a man. Jesus obviously is very concerned with what is on the inside and very concerned with the inner cleansing of his followers, what theologians call sanctification. Now, it's easy to make religion or spirituality about things that we believe, the type of theology that we accept, or spiritual practices, or the type of spiritual experience that we have, or the words that we use to describe our relationship with God, or what set of ethical standards we hold. But Jesus does not talk about these here. He talks about inner defilement and inner purification. That is the work of God inside a person. God cleanses us from the inside out. This happens by the grace of God through faith in Jesus Christ. Lastly, Jesus encourages mask removal, not mask wearing. Here we get to the word hypocrite, which keeps coming up in all these verses throughout this chapter here. A word he often uses in addressing the Pharisees. Now, the original Greek word in this text, the word that refers to a stage actor in ancient Greek plays. In ancient theater, one player could play many roles by wearing different masks, and they would speak through the masks. Now, we see that sometimes even today in theater. We went to the Barnstormers Theater to see the last play, last weekend, Hounds of the Baskerville. Very interesting. They just had 3 people in the cast, but those 3 people played a variety of different roles. They just wore a little different costume and spoke a little bit differently. One person playing different roles. Back in ancient Greek theater, one person would play several roles, but they would play the roles by putting on a different mask. That word is the word that Jesus uses in this passage. He says that the Pharisees were wearing masks. They hid their true nature. The problem was that they came to identify with their roles, and even to believe that they really were the characters that they portrayed with their masks. Jesus confronted them and tried to get them to remove their masks and to reveal who they really were. To look in the mirror, see their real faces, only with radical honesty with oneself and with God and others is true spirituality possible. Let's take Jesus' medicine. Let's apply this to ourselves. We create personae for ourselves. The Latin word persona is another word that refers to this mask. It means literally to sound through, because a person speaking through a mask back in ancient theater. We get the word person from this word persona, and personality. You know, we develop elaborate personalities over our lifetimes. And we attach our name to them, and we own them, and we think we really are our personality traits. And we invest a lot of emotional energy into maintaining these egos. Most of us have even convinced ourselves that these personages are our real selves, but they aren't. They are elaborate, socially and psychologically constructed fictions that we have created to cope with life and to protect us from perceived harm. And mental illness, I think, occurs when these psychological constructions begin to fail. We can't keep them together because we've committed too many lies that contradict different parts of it, and our masks begin to slip. The truth is that we are not who we think we are, nor who we pretend to be. We are not who we have convinced ourselves we are. Who we are is not the social roles or the psychological roles we play. Who we are is who we are in relationship to God. And we do not know who we truly are until we stand psychologically open and naked before God. That's what the story of the fall of man in the early chapters of Genesis is all about. When Adam and Eve ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, they hid themselves from God in the bushes, hid themselves from each other with clothing. See, that story there in Genesis is not about sex or physical nakedness. It's about hiding from God and from others and from ourselves. It's about the masks we wear to hide the truth of who we really are. Who we really are is that we are men and women, creatures of God, creation of God, created by God, in the image of God, to represent God, and to be in fellowship with God, and most important, to glorify God. It's not about the dramas of our lives. It's not about us. Most of what we think is important in our lives is not important. They're simply fabrications. We do not even know who we are until we gaze unashamed upon God. And when we know God, then all this other stuff doesn't matter, because we realize that life really isn't about us. It really is about God, and it's about other people. That is what Jesus taught as the two greatest commandments, to sum up all the law. To love God with all our heart, mind, soul, strength, and love our neighbors as ourselves. And when the masks fall away, that's when life in Christ begins. Then we can begin to live from the inside out. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, we confess to you now that so much of our lives are just wrapped up in ourselves and our own issues, our own interactions with other people, and how it all affects us. That 99% of what we go through every day has so little really to do with you and your purpose for us on this earth. That we have assumed these roles that we have created for ourselves. And we have forgotten who we really are, who you really are, what your purpose for our lives on earth really is. That is to love you with all our heart, to glorify you, and to serve you. Lord, we pray that you might take away all this other stuff in our lives, and that we might be able to surrender ourselves to you and live our lives in love completely for you. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen. Let us, at this time,